Landlords removing problematic tenants. We're going to talk about that live right now with expert property manager Cleo. Stay tuned.
I'm the ringleader, so listen up.
Oh, Claire, it happens everywhere. It happens in all industries. You know, doctors have problematic patients, patients have problematic doctors. You know, it's out there.
Yeah, there's definitely a cause for topic today. There is a special planet. We just moved them all onto that planet.
Just push that problem onto someone else. So tell me, you've been managing real estate for almost 20 years now. You understand tenancies impeccably well, and thanks for coming on to share your expertise. What is a problematic tenant?
Look, a tenant that's problematic can be a lot of things. It's not just, someone that doesn't pay rent on time or isn't clean or tidy. It could be that someone, because we do deal with a lot of personalities and characters and tenants, of course. They might clash with someone in a building, for example. There's a particular neighbour that they don't like in a unit complex that becomes, confrontational, or, they annoy strata. There's quite a few things that can make you a problematic tenant or tenancy for a landlord. Another thing would be, a tenant that's been in the property for a very, very long time, over 7 or 8 years. Once that tenant's been there for that long, the property is almost like their own. It's theirs. It's harder to move a tenant along that's been there for a very long time.
And I guess it becomes a little bit your camp when you've been there. And I think where I find landlords get concerned is the maintenance of the property. For that duration. The paint, the carpet. The property hasn't had an opportunity for a refresh, so it starts going into a dive. So tenants, there are, it does happen where we have tenants that have to that have got to go. And look what it says: scrambled real estate news this week. Oh, Novak stuffed it up on the bottom. Oh no.
You're still in holiday mode, Mark.
Oh, what happened there? That was a rookie move. I'll take that off. So Claire, so we've established what problematic tenants could be. Landlord wants them to go. This is probably the most difficult part, because it's asking people to leave their home. And we've got to be respectful. We've got to be mindful. They've got families. How do you do it?
It's not easy. We do it as tactfully as possible with the owner's interest and the tenant's interest at heart. Sometimes we help the tenant in the respect of finding another property for them. That would entail going online, speaking to other property managers in other offices, saying, if you've got something in this sort of criteria, could you, help our tenant out? I do find a lot of the tenants that have been in a property, like you said, that needs a lot of maintenance, usually their rent is quite below market. So trying to find them something like a 3 or 4 bedroom house that's now almost $2,000 a week and they're only paying $800. I mean, that's a really difficult task, but we do our best to try and help that situation, because at the end of the day, they get 90 days with a no grounds notice, and they've got that 3-month period to look for something else.
So what happens if a tenant doesn't want to go?
Well, usually with a no grounds notice, it's the maximum allowed legislative notice to give to a tenant. So it's a lot of time to find somewhere. But if we get to the 90 days and they basically find that they haven't found anything, it's an end cap scenario. We put in our application for the owner to say they haven't vacated on this date. And then when we turn up to NCAT, they will give them a time frame to move. There's no, you get to stay at the property indefinitely. There will always be a finality date, but whether or not it's extended for a period of time because the tenant hasn't been able to find something, usually, in my experience, the maximum's been an extra 2 to 3 weeks. That's all.
So, with a that's someone with experience. So, do you find that removing tenants out of properties, if you don't have experience, like it's sometimes a landlord self-managing, becomes a little bit messier? Probably, probably a bit of a leading question, but yeah, do you find that a landlord that are self-managing sometimes come to you and say, "Look, can you do this?" or "How do I do this?"
All the time, we get a lot of managements from people that have self-managed, that they're in a scenario where they're frankly over their head now. They don't know how to approach their tenant and how to have their tenant move out. And then we come in with advice. Usually, they've not been to NCAT before. Most of the time it's going to end up at NCAT, and we're the ones with the experience for that. So they tend to bring the property over to us to manage, to clean it all up, do the applications, attend NCAT, and then move the tenant on and start fresh with a new tenancy. But it is a lengthy process, and the landlords that self-manage sometimes get themselves in to scenarios where managing agents wouldn't, because we just have the experience. We know what to look for. We would not let arrears surpass the 15-day mark, for example, and tens of thousands of dollars be owed, or the property's been destroyed for whatever reasons, because we do routine inspections. We've got things we have in place to ensure that things don't get to that level. But I mean, you just don't know. Sometimes a good tenant can turn into a naughty tenant at any time.
And what I find with, I do have to say, what I find with a great property manager in this process is, I find that you guys often do a clean cut early rather than a messy cut late. So I often find that you will make decisions early before they get out of control, before you hit that corner, and then make that change. I find often sometimes, and sometimes just saying a little is better than saying too much. And landlords sometimes, or a property manager without experience, sometimes will just make an absolute mess of a situation, with exiting of a tenancy, when it could have been so much simpler. Which is unusual. You'd think normally, more information, better. But sometimes you when you got to go, and you just got to be respectful and simple about it, not drawing.
Yeah, and like you said, we anticipate things before they happen. We're not fortune tellers, but we have done and dealt with a lot of scenarios that are very similar, and they give you telltale signs. Oh, we're heading down this road, and I've been down this road before. Let's see what we can do to make sure that we don't get to that end point. For an example, I have a tenant that pays rent frequently late, and this is where it's going to turn into a problematic tenancy. And I spoke to the tenant, and because maybe they're just used to, I pay every week or so late, I'm still paying whatever. And I spoke to the tenant yesterday, and I just said, frankly, look, the property market's really strong right now. You can't afford to be in a tenancy where you're expendable because you're not paying rent on time. You are paying the rent, but you should be 2 weeks in front. The owner shouldn't be waiting behind. So there's all these tenants looking for rental properties. They only have to give you notice to vacate and find someone that can pay rent on time. And the tenant goes, oh, okay, and that might change the behavior. It might not, but at least I put it out there, like, if you continue paying rent late, the owner's going to serve you a notice, and we're going to get a tenant that will pay rent on time. Simple as that.
Heads up.
Yeah, just a heads up.
Any other things with removing naughty tenants?
I don't think so. I think we've covered pretty much everything. If you are a private landlord out there and you have got a scenario where you don't know how to get out of, I'm always available to talk you through it or give you advice, or if you would like us to manage it for you, we can do that. I know Bronca's a specialist as well in taking on new managements at NCAT.
Why, yeah, some of the cleanups I've seen you ladies do from other agencies, it's absolutely amazing. It's like chalk and cheese watching the two different outcomes play out. But it's a big one out there, and I think in a landlord's world, it and I sort of don't mind, but it definitely is a tenant's world when you end up in a tribunal situation. The compliance is fantastic for a tenant out there, and it's very respectful and very considerate of tenants. And I find that in New South Wales, it's left to the landlord to manage their interests because they are the one with a representative. They are the one that sort of should be it's sort of I don't know how to say it respectfully, but yeah, it's a really really hard waters for a landlord to navigate, and it's easier waters for a tenant to navigate. So having a really good property manager, I am plugging property managers, but that's what I do. But I see that difference every day, all day. So and this is just one aspect of removing troublesome tenants out of properties. But there's hundreds of sort of waters that you have to navigate your landlords through. Here's an example.
Yeah, so it isn't something that we talk about all the time, but there is a hope that you will get a better tenancy. We do deal with a lot of owners that may have had a bad experience, but it's not always a bad experience, and there's some really great, and there's mostly perfect tenants out there, especially in these times when there's not a lot of rental stock. So be good.
Legend. Thank you so much. And you've got a troublesome tenant that's been banging on your door that you've got to go and remove now. Her name's Athena, and
yeah.
Yeah. Good luck
Sorry,
with her.
guys. I need attention, my naughty tenant. See you.
See you later. Thanks.
Bye.